Joel Miller murdered a hospital full of people to save one girl. The choice was neither tactical nor heroic, but a complete breakdown. Fans have debated for over a decade whether he made the right choice, but seeing the consequences in Season 2 requires us to stop romanticizing the events in that operating room. Joel saved Ellie because he was a broken man who could not survive another funeral, rather than because he was a good father. This is the psychology of toxic protection. Understanding the monster in the hospital requires looking at the carpenter in Texas. The death of Sarah shattered Joel's entire perception of safety, in addition to breaking his heart. Psychologists call this a foundational wound. When the soldier opened fire in 2003, Joel learned a lesson that would dictate his moves for 20 years, as he realized complying with authority gets you killed, and helplessness is a death sentence. The watch on his wrist acts as a symbol of the moment his emotional development froze, rather than just a keepsake. Joel simply existed in a state of hyper-vigilance for 2 decades while waiting for the next disaster. He protected himself from love more than he protected himself from the infected. The story skips 20 years quickly, but that period represented 7,000 days of violence for Joel. He became a predator instead of merely surviving. He admits to being on both sides of ambushes, engaging in torture, and killing innocent travelers. This behavior goes beyond doing what is necessary and enters the realm of moral injury, which is the damage done to the conscience when violating one's own ethical code. Joel had to shut off his empathy completely to function. He treated Tess as a survival partner rather than a lover, and viewed smuggling as a job. This emotional numbing is a classic symptom of complex PTSD. Joel is no longer a man by the time he meets Ellie, but a weapon that has forgotten how to be deactivated. Joel calls Ellie cargo when Marlene first assigns her to him. This label serves as a psychological defense mechanism rather than simple rudeness. Attachment theory defines this as a dismissive-avoidant style. Turning her into a package to be delivered means he does not have to care if she dies in a world where death is constant. He physically recoils when she tries to bond with him. He forbids her from talking about Tess and refuses to take the picture of Sarah. Every attempt Ellie makes to reach out hits a wall, because his brain equates attachment with inevitable agony. He rejects her because he is terrified of her, rather than out of hatred. The shift happens in Jackson, though the reasoning is complex. Joel claims he tries to give Ellie to Tommy for her safety, but he is actually running away before the attachment deepens. Ellie cracks his armor when she confronts him with the truth that everyone else has abandoned her. This moment swings his attachment style from avoidant to anxious. She suddenly becomes the only thing keeping the nightmares at bay instead of just cargo. He plans a future and talks about learning guitar by the time they reach the university. This future thinking signals that his depression is lifting. But this healing is dangerous because it relies entirely on the survival of one person. Winter changes the dynamic as Joel becomes helpless and Ellie acts as the protector. The real trauma occurs when he wakes up to find her hacking David to pieces in a burning restaurant. He pulls her off while holding her exactly like he held Sarah, and uses that pet name for the first time since 2003.
Okay, baby girl.
The replacement is complete in that moment because Ellie ceases to be her own person in Joel's mind. She becomes a second chance at saving Sarah, which turns his protection toxic. He tries to save her from the reality of the world rather than just David by wrapping her in a non-existent bubble. He fails to see that she's saved herself, seeing only a little girl who needs him to function. The facts of the hospital scene show that Joel never tries to negotiate or ask what Ellie wants. He enters a dissociative fugue state where he kills nearly 40 people in the show and potentially dozens more in the game. He executes surrendering soldiers and kills Marlene without blinking. The event is a slaughter rather than a rescue mission. His nervous system floods with cortisol and adrenaline to trigger a severe fight response that overrides all logic. He knows a cure is possible, but does not care. Telling Marlene he would do it all over again is not heroism, but the act of a man burning down the world to keep himself warm. The death of Dr. Jerry Anderson serves as the hinge upon which the entire saga turns. While players can kill him with various weapons in the game, the canon event involves a single shot or stab. Joel sees an obstacle rather than a father or a brilliant immunologist. He dehumanizes Jerry just as he did the hunters in Pittsburgh, even though Jerry was a man making the impossible utilitarian choice to save millions with one life. Killing the only person capable of making a vaccine doomed every future victim of the infection. Joel took away the hope of the world because his own hope was wrapped up in a teenage girl committing an act of selfishness masked as love. The lie compounds the tragedy of the massacre. Ellie knows something is wrong when she wakes up in the back of the car still wearing her hospital gown. Joel looks her in the eye to swear that the Fireflies found others and that a cure was impossible. He gaslights her by constructing a false reality where her immunity means nothing. He strips her of her purpose because she might have returned if she knew she could save everyone. Joel robbed her of agency by deciding her life was more valuable to him than her choice was to her. This behavior resembles possession more than parental love, as he needed her to be alive more than he needed her to be whole. Joel fundamentally misunderstood Ellie's trauma. His pain stemmed from losing people, but hers came from surviving when others died. Riley, Tess, and Sam all died while she lived. Her immunity was a burden that gave meaning to those deaths, as she insisted it could not be for nothing. Joel confirmed her worst fear, that her survival was pointless by taking away her chance to be the cure. He forced her to live with the guilt of walking away, while stripping her of the redemption she desperately sought. He saved her body at the cost of her spirit. The light leaves her eyes in that final shot, implying that she realizes she can no longer trust him, even as she agrees. The airing of Season 2 completes the picture. The events in Jackson and Seattle result directly from Joel's actions in the hospital, because violence begets violence. Killing Jerry Anderson created Abby, and lying to Ellie created the rift that kept them apart during his final years. The tragedy is that Joel died while Ellie was still learning to forgive him. The debate centers on realizing that Joel signed his own death warrant when he pulled the trigger in Salt Lake City. He bought Ellie a few more years of life by paying with his own blood and her innocence. The creators themselves are torn regarding the morality of the ending. Neil Druckmann stated he believes Joel was right and argues that a parent would burn the world down to save their child. Showrunner Craig Mazin agrees that he would likely do the same, even while knowing it is wrong. This complicates the narrative given how severely the story punishes him. The distinction lies between what is understandable and what is moral. Empathizing with Joel's pain and understanding his motivation does not stop his actions from being a crime. The story warns about what happens when love creates a tunnel vision that excludes the rest of humanity. Rather than celebrating Joel's love, Joel failed the philosophical trolley problem by choosing to save one person, while diverting the train to hit millions. A utilitarian would call him a monster, though a deontologist might argue he had a duty to protect his child, regardless of the consequences. Joel acts as a traumatized father rather than a philosopher, proving that ethics disappear in the apocalypse. Concepts of the greater good do not exist for him, replaced only by us and them. The Fireflies became the enemy the moment they threatened his world. This tribalism is human, yet destructive to societies. The human race would have gone extinct if everyone acted like Joel. He rejected the civilization that relies on sacrificing personal desires for the collective. Toxic protection occurs when shielding someone from danger also shields them from growth. Joel curated Ellie's life rather than simply saving it. He decided what truths she could handle and who she was allowed to be. Killing the Fireflies ensured she would never be the savior she wanted to be, forcing her into a normal life in Jackson she never requested. This dark side of the provider archetype claims to know what is best for the other person. This infantilizes the loved one. Ellie spent years resenting Joel because he did not respect her enough to let her die for her beliefs. Judging Joel by the standards of a hero reveals him as a failure who doomed the world and lied to the person he loved most. Judging him as a human being makes his actions seem inevitable. A man who lost a daughter in 2003 would never let another die in 2023. The tragedy is that his greatest act of love was also his greatest sin. He saved Ellie's life while destroying her trust, buying her a future filled with ghosts. Joel was neither a villain nor a hero, but a father who refused to acknowledge that time had run out. The Last of Us is a story about the cost of love, rather than zombies. Joel casts a long shadow over the fallout in Season 2. Every punch thrown by Abby, every scar on Ellie, and every grave dug in Jackson traces back to that operating room. The world Joel left behind is defined by his refusal to let go. He demonstrated that love can be a violent and destructive force. The most terrifying realization is that most people would have done exactly the same thing if they stood over that operating table with a gun in their hand. Joel Miller forces the audience to consider what they would sacrifice to save a loved one. Viewers must decide if they would sacrifice their morals or the world. Joel gave his answer and paid the price for it. Ellie's journey continues as the characters pick up the pieces. He may have been wrong or even a monster, but nothing could stand between him and his daughter. Hit like and subscribe for more detailed examinations of the psychology of your favorite characters.